Welcome to Optimal Humanity, and thank you for joining us on this session. We have entitled this session Overcoming the Over 50 Curse. We're going to go over what we mean by the over 50 curse and provide you with the means to overcome the curse. By the over 50 curse, we mean what some people have called the four horses of the apocalypse, the four sickness that are killing America before that time. These are first, heart disease, cardiovascular problems, with 700,000 premature deaths a year. In second place, we have cancer with over 600,000 deaths. Then we have cerebrovascular disease or stroke with 165,000 deaths. And last, we have Alzheimer's with 120,000 deaths a year. All these are unnecessary deaths that are 100% preventable. All have to do with metabolic dysfunctions. That is, with what we eat. All of them are within our control of what we choose to do. Seems that choosing is the problem, but obviously people don't choose cancer, don't choose cardiovascular disease. What's going on? We will provide you a way so that you can choose what you want. The solution to the four horses of the apocalypse is what Casey Means calls in his book, Good Energy. Nikola Tesla had a problem that he entitled The Question of Increasing Human Energy. How can we increase human energy if that is the cause of all those preventable causes of death? Now we know what the solution is. The solution is to optimize our metabolism, specifically the power source of our human body, which is the mitochondria. In the United States or globally, the leading cause of what is called non-communicable disease are those diseases that are totally preventable and that are the so-called chronic disease that have nothing to do with accidents or death due to age, but that are preventable. The total number of deaths globally that are on our control, so-called non-communicable disease, is 74%. That means 74% of people that die globally do not have to die. In the United States, it's a whooping 81%. This non-communicable disease amounts for 226 million life years that are dying unnecessarily, prematurely. Of 121 million life years of people that die in their 50s, and 105 million years of ill health, of disability. 105 years. That means 105 years are living with disability. 105 million years. Health span. Health span means the amount of years that we are going to live without debilitated illness or disabilities or amputated limbs. In the United States, it is 63.9 years. At 63.9 years, Americans are going to have disabilities and not going to be able to live with high quality of life. From the year 2000 to the year 2021, we dropped over 2 years of the health span. We're going backwards. In the years lived with disability, how many years do we live with disability? United States is the longest. The question is, how did we get there? Nietzsche, in the previous century, says that he calls an individual decadent when he chooses what is disadvantageous for him, when he doesn't choose what is good for him. Now, what is addiction? The latest definition of addiction, the scientific definition of addiction, is that it is a chronic condition that involves compulsive seeking and taking of a substance or performing an activity despite negative or harmful consequences. When we no longer choose what is good for us. Back to Paul's question, why, if I know what's best, choose what is worst? The answer is addiction. The answer is what Nietzsche named decadence. Now, let's just go a little bit into these definitions that do not make sense to me. Something's wrong. The number of alcoholic deaths in the United States is 178,000 deaths a year. And it is called the highest addiction in the United States. So we think of an addict, an alcoholic, or opioid with fentanyl addiction. Fentanyl addictions amount for 81,000, even half of alcoholism. Now, get this, cardiovascular disease amount for close to 1 million deaths. And the non-communicable disease in the United States alone amounts for 2.6 million a year. That's a completely different order of magnitude than alcoholism or opioid. Yet, everybody tries or makes a big deal about alcoholism or opioid addiction. We have the national opioid crisis to have awareness for opioid addiction. Yet, we do not have a national food crisis centers where we can get educated into what is causing 2.6 million deaths a year. The University of Michigan tells us that the tobacco industry hooks us into cigarettes by making it a lot more addicted. They hook the public into tobacco by making nicotine a lot more addicted. Now, there was a big war against tobacco, and the same University of Michigan tells us that the same tobacco companies are using now the exact same strategy of hooking people into ultra-processed food. The same techniques, advertising and substance, that they added to nicotine, they added it to food. In the 80s and 90s, the University of Michigan made a study telling us that Philip Morris and R.G. Reynolds, the big tobacco industries, bought Kraft, General Foods, and Nabisco. the exact same techniques used to hook us into tobacco. Now they are using it on the ultra-processed food, and we get hooked. When we said that all preventable disease or all non-communicable disease are what we choose to do, our choices are completely manipulated by the former tobacco industries or now the ultra-processed food industries. Now, let me tell you these statistics. When we have 4 servings of ultra-processed food, and a serving is a handful of Cheetos or pretzels, that constitutes a serving. If we take 4 servings a day of ultra-processed food, we increase our chance of dying by 62%. 62%. And any additional servings, if we have 5, increases it by 18%. That's the effect of ultra-processed food. That's the effect of why, if we don't choose to be unhealthy, we are unhealthy. What is the solution? It's quite simple. Our food, what we choose to put in our mouth. And more specifically, is animal-based eating. Leviticus, a lot of people say, for instance, that the Bible tells us to eat plants, plant-based food, the Seventh-day Adventists, Helen White, and what have you. However, in Leviticus 11, the chapter 11 of Leviticus, they tell us what land animals we can eat. And strange enough, they tell us there are animals with split hoofs and there are calves that they eat 4 stomachs and they are ruminants. And what science have tells us now is that that is indeed the best food to eat ruminants. I cannot pronounce this thing, but ruminants means split hoof and animals that have 4 stomachs. We only have 1 stomach. Cows, sheep, and what have you, they have 4 stomachs because they ferment the food. And in so doing, they get rid of all the different toxins. And once it's been fermented, they then digest it and create that wonderful food for humans' consumptions that is animal-based. I do not know how in the Bible they realize that. So now we're going to talk about a brief history of the 2 biggest blunders of humanity. We're going to start with the second one. The second one has been called the biggest blunder. We at Optimal Humanity do not agree that that is the biggest blunder. But the second biggest blunder is agriculture. Agriculture brought to humanity health issues, inequality, warfare, tyranny, social conflicts, and environmental problems and starvation. You might think, oh, but we're not starving with agriculture. Just look around the world, how many people are starving. All because of agriculture. So we call that the second biggest blunder. What is then the first biggest blunder? You might be surprised with this, but the biggest blunder of humanity is the invention of thinking. The invention of thinking brought what in the Bible, allegorically perhaps, calls disobedience, to disobey God. Now, what is God? God is the Word of God, which, as we have said, word means logos. When we deviated from the logos, what is the logos? Nature is the way of nature. The logos is what makes things be the way they are. That's the Word of God. When before we invented disobedience or invented thinking, we were strictly by the dictates of the Logos. We went hand in hand, like our guardian angels. How else could our ancestors survive through all those hardships, the Neanderthals and what have you, when we were probably at the very low of the food chain, yet we survived. Why? How can that be? Because we listened to the Logos. Not so much that we listened, but we were guided by the Logos. When we learned thinking and to disobey, by the way, comes from the word to listen. Disobedience means to stop listening. We stop listening to the Word of God. We stop listening to the Logos. That is what the great William James called the breakdown of the bicameral mind. That's the name of a book called The Origin of Consciousness on the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind. I strongly recommend that book. So that disobedience happened during the Bronze Age. Then, after that, we started to disobey, and the Logos or the Word of God, through the years, through history, became the God of Spinoza, that Einstein plagiarized, and they started calling it the laws of physics. So God became the laws of physics, the Big Bang, and they call it the God particle. And then completely devoid of any moral, of ethical, or behavioral connotations. We stop listening as to what to do, and we just call it the laws of physics. Finally, Nietzsche in the 19th century said, God is dead. Of course, he wasn't a big fan of having no God. He realized that in humanity, God no longer ruled. People no longer listen to the Logos. And when that happens, the Logos is the same as the Tao of Lao Tzu, which means the way. The first Christians, by the way, known themselves as the way, because they follow Jesus to God, the way. God is dead means suddenly there are no paths, there is no ways. Like the poet Antonio Machado says, wanderer, there are no paths. Paths are made as you carry on. We suddenly lost the path. Which way is up, which way is down, who knows? In the 1950s, a strong concept that perhaps you not have heard about, but that the food industry have utilized, is what is called super stimulus. A super stimulus, briefly, in short, tells you that you can create an object that will overstimulate your instincts for other purpose than what it was intended for. For instance, you could see subliminal messaging and be stimulated, but the instinct was not designed for subliminal messaging. And the food industry takes advantage of super stimulus. All the so-called ultra-processed food have ingredients, substances to overstimulate your instincts and make it craving. Everybody says, well, I need motivation. And what is motivation? Well, motivation is the desire to do something. Well, don't you think a drug addict, an opioid addict, has the desire to stop drinking or stop using opioids? Don't you think the people want to have the desire to be healthy, to have a high quality of life. Yet the reality tells us, well, no. Then I ask you, what is motivation? Everybody is motivated, yet they cannot do it. Motivation, strictly speaking, is dopamine. If you have a spike of dopamine, you're going to be motivated. If you have a low spike of dopamine, you're not going to be motivated. Now, like we believe and what we say in Ultimate Humanity, control dopamine and you control the world. The solution is how can we control our dopamine? And we're going to be giving you that answer, specifically what to do in coming chapters. Now, the solution, in strictly speaking and specifically, is what the Greeks call dieta, which what we mean by diet. Dieta doesn't mean diet, what you eat or what you don't eat. It means the way of life. The solution is your way of life. Nobody can give you that solution. Science, technology, your government, your church. It used to be that the church told you what to eat, the so-called kosher food. But the solution is what you choose to do. And we're going to be giving you the tools so that you can control your choosing, control your motivation. The solution, it is the proper human diet. Why proper? Proper because it follows the dictates of the Logos. Proper because it goes in accordance to the Word of God. Proper because it's what the latest science telling us that indeed what our ancestors used to eat, it is the proper human diet. A proper human diet has two components. The solution has two components. The first one is diet, the proper human diet. And just like there is a proper human diet, just like I said, there is a proper way to put a jigsaw puzzle together, there is also a proper way to exercise. What we need to improve of health is to do the right exercises, specifically to get rid of the visceral fat. And we will be giving you the tools so that you can lower your visceral fat. Now I'm gonna ask you, I'm gonna challenge you, what is eating? I'm sure most of the people, first of all, don't have a clue of what is eating, but they will say something like eating is to put something into your stomach through your mouth. And in all honesty, that's the definition of a garbage disposal. Eating is not just putting anything into your mouth through your stomach. Eating is what Casey means, says, matching cellular needs with oral inputs. If you don't do that, you're not eating. Doesn't matter how many things you put into your stomach through your mouth. The matching cellular needs, what that is, that's the Logos. The Logos is what makes things the way they are and what it demands in order to function as it should function. So in the next session, we're going to be going to more specific, what is the animal-based diet, what is the proper human diet, and we're going to be breaking down what we call the 4 stages of health, from the worst to the optimal, and how you can go step by step. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you next time.